Why are Scottish football teams underachieving so much in Europe? I'm going to be diving into some facts and figures, and we'll be looking at fixtures, and we'll be looking at coefficients, and we'll be looking at the form of other clubs and how they've done against Scottish teams this season, like Rijeka, who knocked out Hibs, like Malmo, who have knocked out Rangers of the Champions League, Midtjylland, who have knocked out Celtic of the Champions League, like Galatasaray, and like there's some other clubs that have played Scottish teams in Europe this season, have knocked them out, and maybe they shouldn't have. And we're going to be looking into that today. But yeah, prefacing this video in saying that I want Scottish teams to do really, really well in Europe. I really respect the heritage of Scottish teams in Europe, which again we'll be looking at in a little bit more detail in just a second. But yeah, for me as a content creator and as a neutral in Scotland, I want to see as many teams over here do as well as possible. And I want to have the choice on a Thursday night of being able to go to Pittodrie or Easter Road or McDermott Park, and not just Ibrox, not just Celtic Park. But yeah, we'll be looking into a few facts about the European heritage of Scottish teams in this video, as well as looking at a few of their underachievements this season as well. So speaking from experience, yeah, this season I've been to 5 European games at Scottish grounds for Scottish clubs, and I've seen 1 win and 4 losses. I've seen Rangers lose twice, convincingly, and look poor in both games, against Malmo in the Champions League qualifier and against Lyon in the Europa League group stage. I've seen Celtic win against AZ Alkmaar, and to be honest, they were good on the night. AZ Alkmaar missed a few chances, but then again, you could say that about either team. They did both miss chances, but Celtic did enough in the end to get the win. The atmosphere was fantastic, and I think they deserved the win in that game against AZ Alkmaar, which to me, and again, we'll be going through a lot of the results this season, that is probably the most impressive result from a Scottish team in Europe this season, or at least over the course of the entire tie. To beat AZ Alkmaar, I was quite impressed with Celtic at that stage in the season. And I've also been to 2 St Johnstone games. Again, I think you're being harsh if you say that St Johnstone should have got through those games against Galatasaray and against Lask from Austria. But again, we'll look into that in a little bit more detail in a bit. I just think it's disappointing that out of 5 games, I've only seen 1 win, which, yeah, says it all really. Yeah, first off, I'm going to be showing you Scottish football clubs in international competitions. Let's firstly look at some of the heritage of some of these amazing clubs that we're so lucky to have up here in Scotland. Celtic have been to 2 European Cup finals. The only time, actually, that Scottish clubs have got to the European Cup final were through Celtic's heroics in the 60s and 70s. Of course, Celtic were the first British champions of the European Cup, which again is a stat which is just unbelievable and something they should be so proud of. And yeah, the other time they've been in the final, they lost against Feyenoord. Funnily enough, they beat Inter Milan in Lisbon, and then they played the second final in Inter Milan Stadium, the San Siro, but against Feyenoord. So yeah, little link to Milan there for Celtic. They beat Inter Milan, then they lost in Milan in the final in 1970. What about the UEFA Cup? Well, 3 clubs have got to UEFA Cup finals: Dundee United, Celtic and Rangers. Sadly, the form in those finals isn't great for either side. It isn't like they've played massive clubs in them. I guess they've come up against clubs at good times in their sort of history in a way. Gothenburg in the 80s, again, I'm not 100% sure how good they were, but they got the better of Dundee United across 2 legs. And yeah, Celtic came up against Jose Mourinho's Porto. Again, you could say, I guess Porto are a Champions League side, aren't they? And then Zenit St. Petersburg as well were very good at that time. And I guess they probably are now. And maybe I'd say Porto and Zenit would have the beating of Celtic and Rangers nowadays, especially the form in Europe so far this season. But yeah, I think over the course of their histories, maybe you'd have to say that Celtic and Rangers are bigger and better in Europe over the course of the entire club's history. So I'm not sure. Maybe Porto, they have, I guess they've won two European Cups, haven't they? So maybe I'm being harsh there. Maybe Zenit, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, moving on. Cup Winners' Cup. Rangers have won 1 and I believe lost in 2 finals. And Aberdeen have won 1 as well. So yeah, they've done okay in the Cup Winners' Cup, Scotland. Scottish teams rather. So yeah, across those competitions there, you've got Celtic with the European Cup and Rangers and Aberdeen with a couple of Cup Winners' Cups, and Aberdeen do have a Super Cup as well. But if we just move on quickly to the UEFA Coefficients, this is something that I find really intriguing from the research that I've done into like these Scottish clubs and why they're sort of underachieving in Europe and stuff. And I do actually have some I'll be taking you through like my summary of why I think Scottish clubs are sort of underachieving in Europe a little bit later on in the video. But if we just look at the UEFA coefficient, now we'll look from 2000, which I guess is when the coefficients came in. I'm not 100% sure, but if you go from 2000 down to about 2011, which is when something very big happens in Scottish football, which I'll touch on later on. But yeah, from 2000, Scottish clubs would in the coefficient be 15th, 16th, 12th, and this all feeds into where you qualify to through your league position. So the higher your coefficient, the more Champions League spots you'll have for the group stage automatically, the less qualifying you have to do for the bigger competitions. So yeah, 2000, 15th, 16th, 12th, 9th, 11th, 10th, 10th, 11th, 10th, 10th. So pretty much, you know, like low teens, if not, you know, 10th, 9th, which is pretty good, 11th, all the way through like the mid-2000s and stuff. And then you look at 2011, and that is when, around about the time that Rangers got relegated or demoted or whatever. Now, whatever your stance is on that decision, whether you're in the Rangers camp and you think that the punishment for Rangers was too harsh, or whether you're in the rest of Scotland camp where you think that they deserved that punishment, wherever you fall on that line, I'm not saying where I fall on it or where you should fall on it. We just need to look at the objective facts that it has harmed Scottish football. And in no uncertain terms, it has harmed Scottish football in Europe. Because if you think about it from a Celtic point of view, when Rangers weren't in the league, they didn't have to be as competitive to win the league. They were coming up against so-called smaller clubs. I don't like to use that term, but it's probably true in this case. They were coming up against lesser opposition in the league, and it was easier for them to win, meaning that they weren't as competitive domestically, and they probably weren't going to transfer that into Europe either. But then if you look at the coefficients and what else would damage that, it's not just Celtic and their sort of poor form. We will be coming on to sort of their history in Europe over the last 10, 15 years when this is all kicking off and stuff. We will get onto that. But also the other teams, without having Rangers in the European competition, it meant that teams like, I don't know, Motherwell and Aberdeen were being relied upon to try and get in the Champions League or to get in the UEFA Cup, and they didn't grasp that opportunity. With Rangers out of the league, one or two of these teams could have seized that opportunity, invested and tried to make their club better and tried to get into the Champions League or the Europa League or whatever, but weren't able to do it and probably had some poor results, which has led to this happening. Look, let's go back to the coefficient. 2011, 15th, and then 2012, 18th, and it went down as low, look, 24th, 23rd, whereas you consider, look, just 10 years before that, it was, where was it, 9th in 2003, and then 2013, 24th, which means that the Scottish League slipped below, you know, another, how many leagues? I don't know, 13 other leagues in Europe, which is absolutely crazy, and then, yeah, you look and it's, 25th, 23rd, 26th, all the way up until the last couple of years when we've seen a bit of a boom in the coefficients for Scottish clubs, for the Scottish leagues, much down to, I guess, Rangers' good form in Europe over the last couple of years, I think it's down to, and getting to the latter stages of the Europa League, but still it is the secondary European competition, whereas I guess they would want to be in the Champions League, which is where Rangers and Celtic, in my eyes, both belong. You look at Sheriff, beating Real Madrid, of course, was a bit of a shock, but you see the Moldovan champions in the Champions League group stage, but you don't see the Scottish. It's absolutely crazy, but yes, as you can see, over the past couple of years, in 2020 and 2021, there's been a bit of a rise in the coefficients. This season was the first season since 2012-13 that Scotland had two teams in Europe's Premier competition. So yeah, it's been a long time since Scotland have had clubs or more than one club in the Champions League because of the coefficient stuff we spoke about earlier, with Rangers relegation and with Celtic not being able to progress that much in Europe, and with the other clubs, you know, the Motherwells, the Aberdeens, the Hibses, whoever would have been in there, Hearts maybe trying to get into Europe and stuff, whilst Rangers were out of the top division for the best part of a decade, weren't doing enough, and thus that hurt the coefficient. And this season was the first season where, yeah, two clubs were in the Champions League. So how did they get on? Well, not very well. Firstly, let's jump into Celtic's history in Europe first. So we'll be going into who knocked Celtic and Rangers out of the Champions League very shortly, and I'll be looking into each of those teams individually and how they've done in the last couple of years. But just shortly before we get into Celtic and Rangers' recent history in Europe, Celtic got knocked out of the Champions League group qualifying stages against Midtjylland, who are from Denmark, and Rangers got knocked out against Swedish opposition Malmo, who I believe both nations come below Scotland in the coefficients. Let's have a quick look. Yes, so Scotland in the coefficient currently 10th, and Sweden and Denmark 21st and 22nd. So huge underachievements on paper, you could say, for those clubs there, for Rangers and Celtic against Nordic opposition. But just looking quickly, so this is Celtic in European football. So, as you can see this season, yes, there's been some pretty poor results for them. Again, like I said, that AZ Alkmaar result, pretty good. And I did see them play in one of those games. They did actually look okay in it. So, yeah, fair play to them for that. But if you look back over the last few years, let's just see how they've done in the Premier competition of Europe, the Champions League. So this year, of course, knocked out in the second qualifying round against Danish opposition. Last year, knocked out against Hungarian opposition. Obviously, that was COVID, so it's just one legger. The year before that, knocked out against CFR Cluj, which are Romanian opposition. And let's just actually have a look where Romania are in the coefficients. 25th. That's this year. Obviously, it would have been a bit different back a few years ago, but it probably wasn't vastly that much different, maybe, I'm not sure. And then the season before that, Champions League, get knocked out against AEK Athens, and then even struggling to get past the group stage of the Europa League when they've got knocked out the Champions League qualifiers. And then you'd have to go back as far as 17-18 to see Celtic in the group stage of the Champions League, and that was under Brendan Rodgers, and they got knocked out of the group stages. To be fair, actually did okay, considering they had Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich and Anderlecht to come third in that group, but then they got knocked out in the next round of the Europa League anyway against Zenit, so they didn't go far. And then the season before that, they were in the Champions League again, this time against Borussia Mönchengladbach, Man City and Barcelona, so they finished fourth that year, a bit of an unlucky draw, but fair play for getting there. And then the season before that, they didn't get past the group stage, the qualifying playoff round, and before that, and then you'd have to go back as far as 2013-14 to see them get in the Champions League again, of which they finished fourth, but again, a bit of a group of death. They've been unlucky with the groups, it seems. That year it was Ajax, Barca and Milan. And then before that, again, you'd have to go back to 2012-13 for when they actually got through the group against Benfica, Spartak Moscow and Barca. And then they got knocked out in the round of 16 against Juventus. But yeah, you'd have to go back as far as 2012-13 that Celtic actually got through the Champions League group stage. And yeah, I mean, it's been few and far between that they've even been in the group stage within the past 10 years. And what about Rangers? Of course, they've had to rebuild from right from, getting League Two in Scotland, haven't they, really? So if we just look back at the last few years, again, they've done okay in the Europa League. Again, not where Rangers would want to be, of course. I guess the fans would see themselves as a Champions League club, not a Europa League club. But yeah, if you see there, look, lost against Slavia Prague last season. That's okay, I guess. They're not too bad of an opposition. I know we all hate them for the racism and stuff, but in pure footballing terms, it's a shame to see Rangers lose against them, but again, you could argue that they're in quite a strong league. And the season before that, they lost against Bayern Leverkusen. That was all around the breakup of the COVID and stuff, wasn't it? But if you go back before that, I mean, 2018-19, they got to the Europa League group stages but came third, so got knocked out. 2017-18, they got knocked out against, was that Luxembourg opposition? It was Progress Niederkorn. Knocked them out in 2017-18, and then you've got to go back to 2011-12, their last Champions League game. Funnily enough, they lost against Malmo, which was their most recent Champions League game as well. And when were they actually last in the group stage of Champions League? 2010-11, and then before that, they came third in that, and then got knocked out of the Europa League later down the line that season. Then they were in the Champions League the season before. They got knocked out. They came fourth. When did Rangers last get through the groups of the Champions League? It wasn't in 2007-8, which is when they went on to get to the Europa League final, UEFA Cup final. It was in, I need to take breath, oh my God, it was 2005-06 when Rangers last got through the Champions League group stage and into the latter stages of that competition, which is actually mad if you think about it. So yeah, just looking at all that stuff, I think it's clear to see that Celtic and Rangers have underachieved if you consider their previous European history and how many league titles they've won. Of course, they are two of the most successful clubs on planet Earth. I know it's they're in the Scottish League compared to, I don't know, say Inter Milan or AC Milan being against Juventus and Napoli and Roma and other bigger teams and stuff, just as an example. But yeah, I think you can say that both old firm clubs have hugely underachieved, even prior to Rangers getting knocked out of the leagues and stuff and having to rebuild back up. I think it's fair to say that, yeah, they haven't done very well. And we will come on to Midtjylland and Malmo and Lyon and Leverkusen in a second if they've played this season. I'll be looking at their form and seeing if Rangers should actually have done better and Celtic should actually have done better. But yeah, before we get into them, let's just talk about the other three clubs that were in Europe this season. So first off, St Johnstone. I feel like it would be a bit harsh on St Johnstone to say they should have gone through, which is why I'm starting with them. I love the Saints after those games that I went to. The atmospheres were fantastic at those two games. But yeah, they did get knocked out against Galatasaray in the Europa League and then Lask in the Europa Conference League. I mean, out of the three teams, Aberdeen, St Johnstone and Hibs, who were outside of the old firm too, that had qualified for the European qualifiers but failed to make the group stages, I think St Johnstone had the toughest task. And if we just look at the opposition that they played against, so Galatasaray, this season at 8th in the league, but if we just go back to last season just quickly, they actually finished second, only a 1 goal difference, but so they finished level on points with the champions Besiktas, and finished, if they'd have scored a couple more goals throughout the season, then they would have been champions of Turkey, which is no mean feat. If we just look at the coefficients quickly, Turkey, where is Turkey? Oh, it's actually... Is it below? Oh, it's way below Scotland, so it's 19th. So in reality, I don't know. Maybe Scottish teams should be doing better against them. Maybe Celtic and Rangers would, not sure. But St Johnstone, were probably unlucky to have faced them. The games that I was at, they just couldn't get near Galatasaray, or the game that I was at, Arda Turan was unbelievable. And they just had technically better players who were just way better on the day. And if we just look at Lask quickly, or LASK, I'm not sure quite how it's pronounced, they are 10th in Europe just now. In Austria just now, rather, sorry. And if we look at them last season, why is it not showing me the Bundesliga? Which one am I looking at here? Here it is, I believe. 2021, here we go, sorry. So yeah, they finished 4th in Austria last season. And yeah, they're, I guess, a pretty good team. They played against Man United in the Europa League, I think, a few years ago as well. So again, the game that I saw them in, they were just technically better off. I think St Johnstone had a player sent off at quite a crucial time, which could have swayed the game. But again, over the course of those two games, if you looked at the quality of the two games I went to, Galatasaray at home and Lask at home, St Johnstone were played off the park, and for large swathes of the game, they couldn't actually string 5 passes together without getting pressed, and they did struggle. So fair play, I think St Johnstone had it quite hard. Moving on to Aberdeen, a little bit disappointed with Aberdeen, I think, towards the latter stage of their qualification process. So they were only in the Conference League, so no Europa League, just Conference League. They beat Häcken. I have looked up Häcken. Where are Häcken? They are currently 8th in Sweden. So yeah, probably should have beaten them, I guess. And we've seen from the coefficient, I think, that Sweden is way below Scotland. So yeah, 21st compared to Scotland's 10. So they should be beating them, and they did beat them 5-3 on aggregate. Again, not amazing 5-3 on aggregate, but it's okay. It's okay. It's early on in the season. They're finding their feet. Then they had to play against, good luck with my pronunciation here, Breidablik from Iceland. Again, they eased past them, you could say. I think that was 5-3 as well, so 2 5-3s. Very high scoring against sort of the Nordic opposition there. And then it's coming up against Qarabag, and that's where it came a little bit disappointing for me. Qarabag are Azerbaijan's best team and biggest team, and while Aberdeen lost 1-0 out on Azerbaijan, they had the chance to come and win it at Pitaudry. Yes, Qarabag have won numerous Azerbaijani league titles, but let's just have a look at the coefficient. I know the coefficient doesn't mean a huge amount, but it kind of does. But look, the Azerbaijan national coefficient is below Hungary and Poland and Romania, and just above Kazakhstan, whereas if you consider where Scotland is, it's 10th. So Aberdeen should really be beating opposition from Azerbaijan, although they're the champions of Azerbaijan, whereas Aberdeen are not the champions of Scotland, so maybe that evens it out a little bit. But Aberdeen have had Ferguson. Aberdeen have got the most UEFA titles out of any Scottish club, and bringing them back to Pitaudry, they wouldn't have thought that they were not favourites to go through. I think any Aberdeen fan would have been confident going in that the crowd could have maybe roared them on, and that they should have had the quality to see off Qarabag. But again, if we just look at the league title from last season, Qarabag won it with only losing 1 game. What about this season? Where are they? Qarabag, I don't know, is that Is that just from last season? I'm not sure how the Azerbaijani leagues work, but if we look back at the season before that, they won it convincingly. Before that, they won it... Why does it not show me the Azerbaijani league? Here we go, they won it convincingly that year as well. So I've just had a quick look at the honours of Qarabag. They are a very successful side. So they've won the league in 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014. So they've won loads of leagues. They've won loads of cups as well. They even won the Azerbaijani Soviet League when it was still within part of the Soviet Union, Azerbaijan. So yeah, they're obviously a good side, and I guess they've been bankrolled a little bit. I don't know if that happens to clubs out there. I guess it does. Again, if we look at their European record, they've been in the Champions League a lot. Qarabag played 6 times in the Europa League after qualifying via the Champions League. How about the Champions League? This includes 7 seasons in the Champions League. So, yeah, they played against Chelsea in the Champions League in 2017-18. Again, so maybe I'm being harsh against Aberdeen, but still, I think you'd fancy a Scottish team to beat an Azerbaijani team, despite who it is and if they're champions. But yeah, again, maybe I am being harsh. Sorry, Aberdeen. Moving on to Hibs, another team who have disappointed me this season in Europe. So first off, they came up against FC Santa Coloma, who, they should have beaten. I mean, they are currently 4th in the Andorran League, so if they didn't beat them, you would be a little bit pissed off, wouldn't you? But then they came up in the Conference League then again, and that was a Conference League, it wasn't Europa League, that was Conference League. Again, they then came up against Croatian opposition, this time in Rijeka. So where did Rijeka finish last season in Croatia? Let's find out. 3rd in Croatia. Quite a way off the sort of top guys, Dinamo Zagreb. But actually this season they are top of the league, so they are obviously a good side. But I mean, they drew 1-1 at Hibs, which ain't a good result. You want to win your home games, and then they went out. I know Hibs did have a man sent off in quite a crucial part of the game, but still to go out to Croatia and lose 4-1, I don't care if you have a man sent off, that's still really, really poor. And if we look at the coefficients here, where is Croatia in this? Where is the Croatian League? 15th, so okay, not bad actually, to be honest. But Rijeka against Hibs, you'd still at least out of St Johnstone, Aberdeen and Hibs, out of one of those 3 against Qarabag, Lask or Rijeka, to not have lost those games and to have at least one of those teams in the Conference League. The 3rd European competition, isn't it? It's not even the Europa League, it's the Conference League, and neither of those teams could make it, sadly. Yeah, sorry if this video is a little bit rambly, but I've just really been enjoying taking you through like the stats of all the teams and stuff. It's really interesting to look at this stuff to me. And again, I'm English, and you hear a lot of English media. You hear Jamie O'Hara and people like that on TalkSport really getting on at Scottish football and really slagging it off and not being constructive in any way. And I guess they do it to get views and to get clicks, which is, I don't know if it is fair enough, but they do it for their own reasons, and maybe they're justified in slagging off certain parts and elements of Scottish football. Like I'm saying, they have clearly underachieved in Europe a lot over the past few years. We'll be looking at Celtic and Rangers this season just very shortly, but yeah, I don't want to come and just swipe at Scottish clubs. I do it because I want the best for them, and like I've already said in this video, I would love to go and watch games at McDermott Park again. Those 2 games I saw against Lask and against St Johnstone were unbelievable, and against Galatasaray were so good, and it's gutting to me that we won't see more of this, and we may not even see more at Celtic and Rangers later on this season because of how poorly they've started in the group stages themselves. So yeah, I'm just saying this from the bottom of my heart that I really, really want Scottish teams to do well in Europe. And even through my lifetime as a kid, like you'd see Nakamura's free kick against Man United, you'd always see Celtic and Rangers in the Champions League group stages. Celtic knocked Liverpool out of the UEFA Cup in 2003, the team that I support, and Rangers obviously got to the final of 2008, and Celtic got to the final in 2003 of the UEFA Cup. But in recent years, it's just not been good enough, in my opinion, and none more so than this season. This is the biggest case in point. Now, Midtjylland, Celtic in the Champions League second qualifying round. The second qualifying round is still very early, and yes, you've got a long way to go to reach the group stage, I know that. But you would hope that Celtic would at least win 1 or 2 of the qualifying rounds and then maybe get knocked out later down the line. But they played Midtjylland, and we'll be looking into Midtjylland in a second. But yeah, they drew 1-1 at home. There was a couple of red cards in that game. Then they lost 2-1 away. And I guess you could make the argument that it was still very early in Ange's tenure. I think it might have been his first competitive games as well, and they had barely signed anyone at that point, and the team was still very sparse and thin in certain areas. You could argue that it still is now, but yes, I don't think it's a good result for Celtic in the slightest. Let's look at where Midtjylland are this season. To be fair, this season they are top of the league, but Let's have a look at where they finished last season. Where did they come in Denmark? I don't know why this keeps doing this. Where did they go in Denmark last season? They finished second behind Brøndby by a point. Celtic finished second in Scotland. So if we look at the coefficients of the clubs, whereas Denmark 22nd in Europe, Scotland 10th in Europe. So you've got second in Denmark against second in Scotland, and Denmark beat Scotland despite the coefficients, which maybe shows that coefficients don't mean everything and they're not gospel, which I guess is true. It does depend on how the team's doing individually rather than like how the whole league performs in Europe. So it's a kind of comparing apples to oranges, but it is a good indication of where the teams should be when they play against each other. And Celtic got knocked out against Midtjylland. Then they beat Jablonec fairly easily, which again we can gloss over. They should be beating Jablonec, former champions of Europe. Yes, should be beating teams like Jablonec. And then they beat AZ Alkmaar again. AZ Alkmaar, where did they come last season? Let's find out. AZ Alkmaar table, 2 seconds. So they're currently 12th in the Eredivisie. I know Eredivisie is a strong league, but where did they come in the league last season? And actually, where does it rank in the coefficients? Yes, 7th. So to be honest, look, they got their best result. They came 3rd in a league which is 7th in the coefficients. So Celtic got their best result in potentially their hardest game there against AZ Alkmaar. And then you come into the group stages, and yes, now these next two parts you could make arguments for, and people have DM'd me saying about, tweeted me and stuff, saying that I was harsh in a tweet that I said about Scottish clubs underperforming in Europe. But if you said to any Celtic fan, just forget who you're playing just now for a minute, we will go into it, so it is important who you play, I know it is. But if you said to a Celtic fan at the start of this season, or at the start of the 1967 season, or the 1968 season when they'd won the European Cup, or at any point through their history, I know Celtic think of their club as being massive, and they are, and they should, because they are huge. If you said to any Celtic fan you will play 2 games in the group stage of Europe's secondary competition, not even the top, the secondary competition, and you will concede 8 goals and not win in those first 2 games, they wouldn't be happy. So yes, you can say it's been La Liga opposition and Bundesliga opposition, which we'll be looking into just in a second. But yeah, it's still not a good look. And yeah, I know that you're playing Bayern Leverkusen, who have unbelievable talent in their squad, and you're playing Real Betis, who are, again, in the La Liga, or in La Liga. That's like saying the league, isn't it? La Liga, the La Liga, La Liga. I'm rambling now. But it is just a bit of a shock to see Celtic concede 8, 4 at home. That isn't good enough. Don't care who you're playing. You could be playing Barcelona in the Champions League. You should still not be conceding 4 at home. Everyone goes on about Celtic and the European nights, and I'm a Liverpool fan. I've been to loads of European nights at Anfield, and I know how much the crowd can help and does help on those nights. If the crowd does help and you still lost 4-0 against Leverkusen, how bad does that make the team? How bad does that make the underachievement of this match? And if the crowd wouldn't have been there, say it was a COVID season, maybe it would have been 5, 6, 7-0. Who knows? I'm not quite sure. Again, Celtic miss chances, and games can go in ebbs and flows, and you can miss a chance when it's still 0-0, and that completely changes the game. And I totally understand that. But over the course of 100 and how many minutes are in 2 games? 180 minutes. You've conceded 8 goals and have no points in the Europa League, which in my eyes for a club like Celtic isn't good enough, regardless of whether you're in a rebuilding phase or not. But let's move on to Rangers here for a minute. In Europe, I think they have been an even bigger disappointment than Celtic this season. And it's interesting to compare the two for me, because it's just fully interesting to see between the two. And again, I think that both clubs are massive, and I will never say I like one over the other, because I think they're both fantastic. I'm completely neutral. But looking at this objectively, neither team has done good enough in Europe this season. And you look at Rangers in the Champions League, losing against Malmo. Let's just have a quick look at Malmo. Where did they finish last season? They finished 3rd in 2021 in the Swedish league against teams like Did they finish 3rd, or is that... let's just see how many games you play in Sweden. I think they must have played a smaller season, maybe. They won it in 2022. I'm not sure, because they have like summer seasons over there, and then they came 2nd. So they're usually around 2nd, 3rd, 1st in Sweden, I believe. I'm not sure if the 2021 league has played out in full yet or not. But basically, let's have a look. So Swedish League 21st in the coefficient, Scotland 10th. Rangers are the champions of Scotland, yet they still lost. And yeah, they lost out in Malmo 2-1, and then they went 1-0 up at Ibrox. I was at that game. The atmosphere was unbelievable. But then Malmo got a man sent off just before the half-time whistle, and so it looked like Rangers just had to go out and win the game, and they completely messed it up. I think players like Barisic were poor on that day. I don't think other players had great games. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just remember Barisic being awful. And Rangers lost 2-1 at home to 10 men when they were 1-0 up, and they had the Champions League in the group state in the palm of their hands. It was the third qualifying round, so I think there would have been another playoff after that, but still it was not good enough. And then you go into the next couple of games against Alashkert, who I think were from Kazakhstan, if I remember rightly. Armenia. So where's Armenia in the coefficients? Oh my god, I might have to do a cheeky Control F to find it. Armenia, I've just seen them 43rd. So they're 43rd in the coefficients, yet Rangers could only just beat the 1-0 at home. Yes, they had a player sent off, and then they drew out in Armenia as well, which again, just winning 1-0 against Armenian opposition. If you said you're going to go through, then you'd probably just be happy with it anyway. But if you told Rangers fans throughout the history of time that their club would scrape a 1-0 against Armenian opposition, I don't think you'd be best pleased with that. And then getting into the Europa League group stage, which is what they qualified for after that win against Armenian opposition. They lost 2-0 against Lyon, a game again that I was at. They looked devoid of ideas, but again, Lyon were bringing Shaqiri off the bench, who has just recently won the Prem in the Champions League with Liverpool in recent years. And Rangers brought Kemar Roofe off the bench, who's played for, Oxford. So, again, there's a big disparity between those teams, and you could say that game should have been a loss for Rangers, much like maybe the Leverkusen one for Celtic. But then to lose it against Sparta Prague, again, not good enough. Gerrard spoke about moments in his press conference there, and that Sparta had the most moments. But, yeah, you can say that. But, again, at the end of the day, would you, as a Rangers fan, be happy with no points in the secondary competition without even scoring a goal against Czech opposition and then at home against French opposition? I just don't think you'd be happy with that. And maybe you aren't happy with that. Again, let me know in the comments what you think. We've just spoken there about some of the Scottish teams, and I think they should all be doing better. Hibs, Aberdeen and St Johnstone. Maybe not St Johnstone. They did have some very tough games, but one of those three should be in the Conference League at least. You should have another Scottish club in the Conference League. I think Rangers and Celtic should be in the Champions League. I think that the other club, maybe Rangers, Celtic Champions League, Hibs and Aberdeen Europa League, St Johnstone Conference League, something like that. Let's hope that in future we can actually have that in Scottish football. We can have teams in every single competition and going deep into Europe. I think is what Scottish teams need. And yes, seeing Sheriff, the Moldovan champions, beat Real Madrid. Why can't Rangers beat Lyon? And why can't Celtic beat Bayern Leverkusen if Sheriff have just beaten Real Madrid? Football doesn't always make sense, but some of the reasons why I think that the Scottish European football scene is the way it is, I'll jump into right now. So one of which is the Rangers relegation. As we saw from the coefficients from earlier, the coefficients dipped massively when Rangers weren't in the league, and that is, I think, due to Celtic not being competitive on a domestic front and winning trebles and stuff so easily. Yes, it's an amazing achievement, don't get me wrong, you still got to beat these teams. I'm not taking anything away from that. They have the trophies, and it's unbelievable, and fair play to them. It's amazing what they've done with those trebles. You've still got to win the games even when Rangers aren't there. But I think that does make you less competitive, and you can't transfer that into Europe. And we've seen that, I think it was only 2 seasons out of the last 10 or 12 or 13 or something, where Celtic have been in the Champions League group stages. So yeah, I think that has damaged Scottish football in the whole in Europe. And obviously Rangers being out of it as well, as I touched on earlier. The other teams who finished second, third or whatever weren't able to do well in Europe because they didn't have the squads, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the fans, they maybe didn't have the history, the sort of feel of a club, the fabric of a club that needs to drive you on through Europe. Like I spoke about European nights at Celtic and at Liverpool and stuff, really driving through the teams, and at Ibrox as well, I imagine. It's happened down the years. I just don't think you'd get that at Motherwell or at Aberdeen. I'm sorry, I'm not saying that to be offensive or whatever. I just think it's the truth that maybe the fan bases aren't as big and they can't drive the teams on in those big moments. And the players that play for those clubs maybe don't believe with a Motherwell shirt on their badge that they can go and play in the Champions League League, but they should have believed, because anything is possible in football. I do also think that the league structure has played a big part in this in recent years. You've only got to go as far down as the Championship to see teams that are part-time. I believe Arbroath are part-time in the Championship, and then even beyond that in League One, I think only 1 or 2 clubs are part-time, maybe 3, full-time, and then below that in League Two, you've got basically just part-time clubs. I think that more clubs in Scotland need to go full-time. There needs to be a big restructuring of the leagues, because even outside of League Two, you've got the non-leagues where players only just recently can get promoted from, and even then it's still really, really hard. Imagine being a player in a non-league team for even like now, before the promotions came in with the Lowland League and the Highland League. Imagine being so good in the non-league and banging in hat-tricks every week and winning every week and winning league titles. Spartans, for instance, won 2 Lowland Leagues without going up. Imagine winning leagues like that and knowing that even with that league title, you won't go up. What's the point in you progressing your career in this country? You might even fall out of love with football and not even play it ever again. So the leagues really need restructuring, but I can't really go into that in too much depth right now, as that probably needs a whole video of its own. But yeah, league restructuring needs to happen to make Scottish football more competitive within, which can hopefully then transfer to Europe as well. Money isn't everything in football, but it does mean a lot. I think that Scottish football doesn't do a good job in selling itself to the rest of the world. If you look at how many games are on TV and stuff, it's like barely any compared to other leagues in Europe. I think Scotland needs to do a lot more in attracting viewership and investment and stuff from outside the rest of the world. And actually, hopefully that's something my channel can do. I guess a lot of you watching this right now might not be from Scotland or even the UK, and you're watching this video. Maybe you're interested in Scottish football, which is great, but I want these Scottish football authorities to do more to make the Scottish League attractive to more people around the rest of the world. And yeah, you look at the investment that the clubs have made this season. Who have Rangers bought this season? I think they just had a couple of free transfers in Lundstrom and Sakala. And the same with Celtic, they didn't really invest much. I think Stevie G actually came out recently, didn't he, in one of his press conferences, saying how Rangers hadn't really signed anyone, and hence the reason why they hadn't done so well maybe this year. And yeah, if we look at who they brought in, Bakuna for 2 million, that is the only player they bought for any money. Sakala was free, Offobor was free, Lundstrom was free, and yeah, you got other people who came in back from loan and stuff like that. And how about Celtic? To be fair, Celtic have spent a little bit more. Maybe they haven't spent in the right areas, maybe. Actually, maybe I'm being a bit harsh. They have spent some money on Kyogo, on Starfelt, on Abada, on Joe Hart, people like that. So yeah, they actually have made some decent signings, I guess. And Jota in on loan, James McCarthy was a free. Celtic have actually done okay in their transfers, to be fair. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on them, but I think people are talking about a rebuild of Celtic, aren't they? But yes, I do think that both clubs could have strengthened more. And if you look at the record transfers in Scotland, the highest fee ever paid for a player was in 2000. Celtic made a couple of big signings in inverted commas. They spent 9 mil and 7 mil in 2018 and 2019 for Edouard and Julien. And then Rangers spent 7 mil on Ryan Kent. But then before that, yes, Michael Ball from Everton to Rangers in 2001. Chris Sutton, Celtic from Chelsea in 2000. And John Hartson, 2001 for 6 mil. And so you've got, it's like Scotland spent more on players in the early 2000s than they do now. And look at the inflation in football. Inflation's gone like this, and Scottish transfer fees have gone like that. There's some weird little thing that's happened where there is just like no money to spend for Scottish clubs anymore. When you consider how big the fan bases are with these two massive teams in Celtic and Rangers, and the other clubs are so well supported as well. It's like such a shame to see, and somehow there needs to be more money brought in. Look at some of the transfer fees that Celtic have had. Tierney for 25 mil, Dembele 19 mil, Edouard 14 mil, Adjur for 13 mil, Wanyama 12 mil, Van Dijk 11 mil, plus the amount of the sell-on clauses they put into all these people's contracts as well. It's absolutely mental that Scottish teams aren't doing so well in Europe, and I really, really wish they are. I'm sorry if this video has been a bit of a long ramble, but I'm very passionate about it, and I would love to see more British teams doing well in Europe. When it comes to English teams, I only want Liverpool to do well. I want to see Man United scraping wins against Villarreal and losing against Young Boys. It makes me very happy inside. But although it's probably bad for the coefficient or whatever, I really want to see all the teams in Scotland doing better in Europe. And this ain't a dig. Like I say, it's all positive, and I always want you lot out there to do the best you can for your country. Please do remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. Not every video I do is as ranty as this. I'll leave my European videos down in the description box below so you can find them. The St Johnstone one against Galatasaray, if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend that one. Even if you have seen it, please rewatch it because it is a classic. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.